Thank you. Thank you for being here, for allowing me to be here, for supporting me to be here, and for being prepared to listen to me. While having breakfast, I unfortunately overheard a conversation, like I do with these big ears. Oh, it will be a boring day again today. There is more to conservation than a conversation. Be assured of that. And it's absolute nonsense that we are forced into believing that we are busy solving crises. Conservation is not a crisis discipline. It has captivated the minds of rather glamorous people that make a living out of deeming conservation a crisis. Please share with me this morning the other side of the coin. Yes, I appreciate I'm a scientist, and I appreciate that for most science is rather boring. Now put that with conservation, another boring subject, and you will have a boring morning. Why rumours? These are the rumours I would like to address this morning for the savanna elephant in Africa. I'm not talking and do not know a thing about a forest elephant. As a matter of fact, as a dean, I haven't seen one in the wild as yet. So that's part of my bucket list. Too many, too few, destructive, a threat to people's livelihoods, and threatened with extinction. I hope to convince you that none of these are true. I've had a wonderful and continue to have a wonderful partnership with IFAL. It has been going on for nearly 16 years now, and IFAL, the University of Pretoria, various foundations, and 16 other donors have kindly believed it makes sense to keep me non-irritated and supported the initiative I will share with you. With IFAL, the partnership has been basically a short, firm instruction. Do your science, do it properly, inform opinion, and influence decision taking. Short and sweet. No qualms, nothing attached. That's the full list. How do you do it? Now the boring stuff. Science-based and humane conservation incentives. You know those political words. We heard a lot of that yesterday. Credibility through science, influencing societal values, implement sensible conservation incentives. I think that's a nice list. So, something to work at. At the end of the day, all of this has not been about the inputs and the outputs, but definitely about the outcomes. And here the outcome has been very clear. All the elephants told us, and please remember I'm not an elephant whisperer, and elephants don't whisper to me, but it was quite clear that if we wish to do and achieve something, we need to develop conservation networks that will maintain ecological variables or processes that ensure persistence. We were not saying we are doing this to avoid extinction and all the other things. So, in short, how many are there? But by far more important is how many could there be? What do they do to others? Well, what can we do to help him? The answers to these questions is all published in peer-reviewed papers. This has been my primary interest, to get the work out there, evaluated by scientists and absorbed by scientists, to make sense of those that produce the outcomes of the outputs. We had as a playground a part of Africa the size of the USA. So it's quite a nice patch. And important to us was, I want to see you also. She affects me dramatically. Wonderful. We played from east to west and south to north across southern Africa, so as to include a gradient of living conditions for elephant as our treatment, to measure the response of elephants to the treatment. Primary productivity low in the west, high in the east. Patchy from now south to north. Elephant numbers low to high. So all those variables put together as your treatment in your scientific approach then give you a response that you measure in elephants, and you have to answer to the questions I've raised. About a fifth of the area of sub-Saharan Africa has been set aside for conservation. That area has doubled in the last 50 years. So why should I be negative? It doubled in the last 50 years. It's patchy. Look, those green, with superimposed on the green, the red patches. They are rather sloppy. They tend to be about around the boundaries of different countries, the borders, so that one flows into the next. They therefore were put where they are for political reasons. If I have a conservation area on my border, I can control people coming in and going out. Can I not? I just put lions and elephant there, and people will not go there. I would love you to appreciate the wonderful effect of space. This is in the far west of our study Transect. I know it's not elephants, but that you see in the picture, but that's okay. Those are not elephant. In the central part, major rivers, a wonderful open space. The Kruger National Park right towards the east. Mozambique right on the eastern side. And I hope that with these few slides, you appreciate the scale and the range of living conditions that prevails. This excites tourism. Tourism is important in my part of Africa, for it generates 12 to 30% of the income of countries in that part of the world. So it's not something secondary, it is right in your face there. Were wonderful things that people appreciate and see. Every single picture I will show you today has been taken of animals in the wild. not of tamed or zoo-kept animals, but only one picture I'll show you later, and then I will say this one is not wild. I've been very fortunate. I've had a lot of young, active, not so wise, but very clever students to work with me on elephant. It has been a wonderful experience, and we could indulge in something deeper than just the general. Our work on elephant demography, elephant numbers, was not about counting elephants. Counting elephants is not science. It's something to keep one busy. We designed an approach to measure elephants from helicopters, measure their back lengths, and from a sample of about 750 elephants of known birth date, we could actually convert back lengths to age. For bulls up to the age of 16, and for cows to the age of 22. By recording from the air cow-calf relationships, we could calculate the age at first calving, the length of a calving interval, the age at last calving, get the age structure of the population, and modeled the growth rate of that population, not in the past, but towards the future. We did this for 17 different elephant populations and included 30,000 plus elephants in the sample. So when I show you a few boring graphs later today, please appreciate there's quite the sample size in that. We looked at spatial dynamics, how elephants used land by satellite tracking 248 breeding herds across Africa. That was a monumental task over 12 years with huge amounts of costs to track an individual group for 1 to 4 years at a given time at hourly intervals, at the accuracy below 29 square meters. So we knew by asking the elephants, how old are you, etc., and by seeing how they use land, we could put these things together and get answers to those few simple questions I've stated earlier. We've also embarked in looking how populations are structured in space by extracting mitochondrial and nuclear DNA from feces and reconstructing these frequencies across the landscape. From the mitochondrial DNA, we could tell how they were linked in the past, and from the nuclear DNA, how they are linked at present. We also looked at their response to environmental change, and more specifically to climate. And I'll share some of the findings with you. So that's the end of the bragging session, okay? Now, what did you find? The number issue. Anybody that tells you how many savanna elephants there are in the place are telling you a lie. For the simple reason is we only can do an estimate of the actual number, and that estimate has an accuracy, if we are lucky, of 20%. So if I say to you there's 1,000 elephants, there could be 800 or there could be 1,200. So I've lied to you by telling you there are 1,000. The end of the number story. With that lie, I will tell you now, I'm lying to you, they might be 400 to 500,000. Okay. Believe it, Politicians, you can quote it, use it, get votes, all that. The important thing to me is what happens with those numbers, those estimates over time and across space. And that is exciting. And the other thing to me is not how many do I have? The answer is how many could I have, given what I have? So how many could there be kept me and some of those unlucky students busy for about 8 years? Our fundamental model was that over time, along the x-axis here, numbers change. They are kept at the lower end, on the left there, by socio-economic forces. We call it politicians and poachers. They keep their numbers there, at a desirable level. It's got nothing to do with the environment or conservation. And then we have this audience, where practitioners protect them and let their numbers go up. And then at the end of the day, we have the elephants that respond to the environment, to ecological limitations, and keep their numbers there. The question now comes, can we define these different stages? The stable state, the ecological stable state, the societal stable state, and the response state. Just to convince you my model is right, here is the model in a white stipple line, and 4 major populations for which we have good counts in southern Africa. And you can see that over a period of 10 to 15 years, what their numbers do is they do what the ecological textbooks tell them to do. So elephants can read, I deduce from that. Their numbers are not continually increasing or decreasing. They try to convert to stability. And when they are stable, you and I can have a beer or a good wine and celebrate that, because then we have achieved our conservation goal: stabilize populations. We went along and assessed long-term trends for all the populations for which we could have good data, and we ended up in having 73 for which we had good counts, good estimates, and of which each population comprised at least 500 elephant. Out of this and our modeling exercises, we identified stable populations, and we then modeled these as a function of food availability, of distance from water, and of poaching intensity. That poaching intensity gave us the low K and the other ecological variables, the high K. We could then identify our populations for that was stable, and we had 18 stable ones, and then we could predict those that are not stable, where will they stabilize? And from that we could say, how many elephants could there be in our study area the size of the USA? We could predict 85% of variability in stability, with rainfall, food productivity, distance from water, and poaching intensity. But this is the important answer. We had a deficit, a huge deficit of elephant in southern Africa, 750,000 according to our model, across 73 deserts. I think this is the first figure away from activism that actually say to you what you should have in elephants, versus what you are having, so that you now have a target to operate with. Don't tell me you have too few or too many. Evaluate this. We know which parks have how many too few and which parks may have too many. And in short, the green bar shows you what we have now, and the red bar shows you the pattern we should have. Okay? May I move on? But why do we have so many elephants in so few places? I had to address that. Northern Botswana, 130,000 elephants in a very nice big area. And the politicians and scientists shouted at us that the elephants are increasing so fast that they have no choice but to introduce a control program of some sort. And that's a complicated way of saying, kill them. We looked at the information available, and in the top line, that red line shows you the elephant numbers converted to logs just to be fancy and scientific, and form a straight line. And yes, if you look at that line from 1975 to 2000, the elephant population is increasing. And that's another lie, because in the lower graph you see that greenish dots and spots, and that shows you the area over which those scientists counted elephants. And as you can see, they merely counted more elephants because they counted them over a huger and larger area. When at a conference some years ago I said this, Ian Kama, the president of that country, said, "The professor wears a beard, I wear a tie, and we shall not kill elephants." The next thing I shortly wish to address, so that you don't repeat our mistakes. The small map on the left is the Kruger National Park. It's about a third the size, no, it's 20,000 square kilometers. It's quite big. Those red dots shows to you, the red and blue dots, shows to you the artificial water points in Kruger. Those in red have now recently been closed. Thank you, Kruger National Parks management. Why was it important to convince him with our work that they should close it? These two graphs on the left for Etosha and on the right for Kruger shows you the home range area, the area over which an elephant family group range as a function of water. And it's clear. The more the water, the smaller the area. The fewer, the lesser water, the bigger the area. The smaller the area, the smaller, or the lower the number of trees you eat. And what happens? You upset tourists and conservation managers. The important thing to note, however, the smaller the area, the shorter the distance you walk per day. And what happens here is your survival of your newly weaned babies gets affected. The further you walk, the more they die. The more they die, the more stable the population. The fewer they die, the more the increase in the population. And the more the population increase, more water you put in. And the more water you put in, fewer trees you have. That's the story. Thank you. This illustrates what I've just said in a single graph for Etosha, I can show it to you for a number of populations. Put in water and a population increase. I hope you will keep your water for my pleasant showers in the hotel and not give it to elephant. Yeah, I illustrate you Wangi. I try to illustrate Wangi National Park to you, and you see a waterhole devoid of vegetation close to it, and you see a fraction of the 100+ elephants Robert and I enjoyed that morning at this one waterhole. Why would elephants go and walk far away to find food if there's nice water close by? And here you look at the results of 17,000 trees that was photographed over 17 years on 4 occasions. So it was a lot of pictures. And I gave this task to a boring student as something exciting to do with her life. And she clearly showed and became famous with this graph and showing that the closer a tree is to a water point, the less likely it is to survive to old age. So trees close to water, you will die. And that upset politicians and tourists in my part of the world. And they love this. And in response to this, they've gone through many, what I now, at my age, might call sins. So what do I ask here is, what do elephants do to others? And this graph by Robert, my colleague here, I forced him to read about 379 papers, every single paper that has been produced on what elephants do to trees and other species. And say to him, do a meta-analysis and show to me what they do. And on the y-axis here, he has a number of papers with good data, and on the x-axis, the effect size. If you are negative, your effect is negative. If you are positive, your effect is positive. If you are neutral, your effect is neutral. And Robert clearly showed here that in most cases, they had no effect. He went on. He showed that the effect they had, and here it's cones D on the y-axis, and the number of elephants in that area per square kilometer had no relationship. If you have a few elephants, they could have a negative effect. If you have many, they could have negative. If you have few, they could be positive. If you have many, it could be positive. It had nothing to do with numbers. It had all to do with the way that elephants operate across the land. Now, I would like to share with you here in green blocks the predicted growth rate of Kruger's elephants after the ending of the cull nearly 24 years ago, 1995. And in red, I showed to you what they actually did. And you can see they actually did do much, much better than what was predicted. They started stabilizing their numbers. And as a matter of fact, when I do this properly, here you can see on the x-axis index of the numbers and the growth rate of the population on the y, and you see the more higher the numbers, the lower the growth rate. Simple. It's not rocket science, this stuff I'm sharing with you. It's very basic. Elephants and climate. Yes. 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 No, I don't agree with Trump. This is temperatures in October in central Botswana. And as you can see over the years, it has increased dramatically. And for the last few years, ever since 1990, It's just about the temperature of an elephant. That means an elephant can't keep cool during the day. Finished. It can't lose heat. It hasn't got sweat glands. It needs water. It's tough times. And here you see that tough time. This is an infrared image of a mother and calf up there. And the redder you are, the warmer you are. You see the mother is green and blue on the side, red on the back. But that for 3 to 5 year old calf is red. Is red. Its immune system will be affected, and its likelihood of death is high. What do elephants do to overcome this? They do, when it gets warm after 30 degrees, they impose behaviors that keeps them cool. On the y-axis, I have the temperature where the elephant is standing, and on the x-axis, I have the actual temperature of the environment. And you can see to the right of that white stippled line, they usually go where the temperatures are cooler than the environment. That's in the shade of trees, and they have a bath, like humans. But when they stand in the shade of trees, what happens? They get bored. And what do you do when you're bored? You play with the tree. And some trees, of course, break when you play with them. So the core temperature of elephants is stable. What will happen if the climate changes? They can't stick out there. I think we will see further adaptive responses. In Botswana, where it's hot now, in summer, the elephants forage at night and not during the day. In the Kruger, where it's not so hot, they forage at the same time during the day. That's the first adaptation. Seeking cool environments, seeking water, changing your activity pattern. But then comes the final one. The go where it's better. Move on, then stay around. And if that is the answer, and all that I've told you is the truth, what can we do to help these elephants? That photograph was of the tame one. That was the one where, not wild. I had to ask the elephants, where would you like to live? Simple, not true. I couldn't ask people where elephants would like to live. I had to do it the other way around. They told us, 4 of my PhD students, they told, we would like to live close to water, far from people, and where plants are greener than on average. I can show you very complicated theses and papers on this, but in short, that's the truth. We then asked people, where would you like to be? And the answer was simple, close to water, far from elephants, and where plants are greener than the average. So a clash of interests. How do we deal with this clash? I'm going to show to you what happens with this clash. This is green pastures in northern Botswana. It's green throughout the year. You have water and food standing in the water, luscious green. This is the backcountry at the same time of year. That white dot you see on the slide is surrounded by elephant. That's the only water they have there. And there is no green food. And when you look at how far these elephants walk, you see that in the dry season, those in the brown areas move double the distance than those in the green areas. In the rainy season, it's about the same. What happens then? Their babies die. Simple as that. Now, this thing of people and elephants wanting the same space have displaced elephants in that area. And I shall want to illustrate here to you. With people, the colors here shows where elephants have the habitat that they would like. And the habitat they would like is all in blue. Map on the right shows you where they are with people. When you take people out on the left, when you have people in, you see elephants lose what they prefer. They have to move. And indeed, it happened. In orange, you see the land that has now become less suitable because of people for elephant. Those black dots show to you all the dead elephants that we could look at during aerial surveys. 85% of those were bulls. Bulls kept on going close to people, but cows moved away from the people. And when cows move away from people, they move into those brown areas and the babies die. So putting all this together, using circuit theory and a clever student, we could produce maps for a belt across Africa to ask where should elephants be. The whiter the dots on the left-hand side, the more it is good for elephant. The bluer, the worst. On the right, you see a map, and you now see green patches. Those are our protected areas in that area. And you can see we have provided quite well for elephants. But shockingly, there are few white and yellow spots that we need to give attention to provide to the needs of elephant. The final one, if you don't mind me. I have to ask this. Do they migrate? You just have to listen to David Attenborough, yeah? Or watch a BBC documentation, and you will learn they do migrate. Most elephants that we studied do not migrate. Only 18% of our studied unit migrated. Why did they migrate? The likelihood of migration is high when your food production is low. And the more your food production as a consequence of rainfall increase, the lower your likelihood of truly migrating. The closer your numbers are to the ideal ecological number, the more you are likely to migrate. So only when you start saturating that environment do you start to disperse. And what you and I can do for elephants is to provide that opportunity. So the rumours, they're all lies. We have an idea, we worked on an idea, we satisfied the idea, we think that designing mega parks for soliciting a specific dynamic, which should be called metadynamic, is sensible. We've, through this work and IFL's initiatives, we've changed the paradigm of conservation in my part of the work, where we no longer focus on single species, but we now focus and manage landscapes. The big question they keep on asking me is, what will the elephants think of this? And the more they ask me, the more I say, I don't know, but so keep on supporting me and I may be able to tell you. I would like to conclude. We know what to do to provide to the need of elephants in Africa. We now need the will to do it. We now have to change our conversations to true conservation. Thank you for the opportunity. That's lovely.
Namaste, sir. Sir, I'm Naman. I'm from the Sri Ram Millennium School. And sir, I just wanted to ask you the thing which you were explaining to us about artificial water. Can you please tell us in details? Like I didn't understand it, so can you repeat it? Type of.
Lovely, thank you. Don't have water holes for elephants in Africa. I still have to see India. This is my first visit only. And maybe once I know more about your lovely country, I will be able to tell you what to do about water holes. But certainly in Africa, we can't afford to have them. They are important where we do not have rivers and we have wildlife and we have tourists. Then we have to satisfy that. But then it's not ecological forces that play a role. Then it's human forces. Thank you for that question.
My name is Abhilash Khandekar. I saw the slide about rumors and you moved on very quickly. So I want to know which are the rumors which are surrounding elephants?
Too many, too few, bad for others, threatened with extinction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You know, it's important in life, if you don't mind me doing this bit.
Last one.
No ways we can get back the past. My past is my past is my past. What I present to that little man, and he should come to my university, I think. He should be a student with me.
Sir,
For you, just a bit. What is important is that we say what do we have and what can we best do with that. That's it. Yes.
hello, I'm Sia.
Hello,
And
Sia.
I'm from the Shira Millennium School. I want to ask you that if it rains or if a thunderstorm comes, and so where do the elephants take shelter then? In the cave?
That's very important. You know what? I don't know. Because I shelter in the cave and I'm scared. Thank you for being such a attentive audience.